Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number
9.
We can't believe we're nearly up to 10 episodes. It's crazy.
First 10 for our avid listeners who tune in every couple of weeks and give
Yeah.
us feedback and have stayed tuned so far. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, exciting news. We have a sponsor now, and that's just massive news that we should probably bring up in this episode.
Exactly. Thank you, Design and Build, for believing in what it is that we want to share with everybody and seeing that this is something that they could back.
Yeah, thank you so much for your support. And yeah, we're excited for the new journey that we are starting. So in today's episode, we're talking about something really important and sometimes pretty underestimated at companies. And in our last episode, we were interviewing Erica Gomez. If you haven't heard that episode, go quickly and listen to it and then come back.
Because it is worth it. She's so good.
No, but really, because Erica mentions the following.
Male and females are brought up differently, and in female environments we get this sisterhood and this friendship that usually doesn't happen as naturally with men. It can, but it doesn't happen as naturally with men. And I think that's the major problem in universities and also in the workplace, is that we as women, we crave a kind of different interaction usually with our peers. And the problem with craving that different kind of interaction is that when you don't have it, it feels like a little bit of a hostile environment. But it is not hostile. It's just that men interact with each other in a different way. And I think when that interaction is also with you, when it's a little bit more distant, sometimes females don't feel as welcome into the environment. And I think that's why these conversations are so important to also have a male audience.
We feel like we belong to a company and we want to feel that we have a connection with our colleagues, even though that we're not friends with them. We don't have to. But we do want to feel that we have an affinity with each other in order for work to be more enjoyable, you know?
And given that like 75% of the workplace is going to be the opposite gender, you don't want to mistake something that is like a simple thing as a difference in communication to end up making like a bad workplace culture.
Yeah, exactly right.
So it's good to identify that and be able to integrate it for both parties. You know, it's not just about learning how they speak. It's also about them. There's no them and us. Sorry, my bad. It's not just about learning how other people in the team speak, what, you know, everyone in your team understanding what you need and then being able to accommodate that from time to time.
Yeah, it's like workplace culture, and this episode in particular, we want to sort of like focus on how to speak everyone's language at work, sort of thing, and how to also identify when a culture at a workplace suits your needs.
Yeah.
If you're a young professional looking for a job, like what makes a good place to work at. That's pretty much where we're heading in this episode. And again, this is based purely in our experiences and what we have learned throughout the few years that we have been in the industry. And if you guys have any comments to add, we would love to hear from you. And yeah, we can continue to discuss this further. But without further ado, what is workplace culture, Sohan?
Yeah, because this all sounds like, you know, pretty high level. But if we want to understand workplace culture, I think this is something that, you know, fundamentally any person can relate to, even if they don't have the exact definition. If we bring it in our own terms, any person can relate to what workplace culture is, because what separates any two workplaces and makes them unique is their culture, in the same way as what separates two individuals is their values that they live by.
Yeah.
So that being said, if that wasn't completely convoluted, workplace culture is the overall character of the business, and it's unique to each organization, even though if you read company culture statements, most of them end up looking quite similar. A lot of times what happens is that, yeah, that looks like a good thing on paper, but what ends up being practiced is rather quite different, which is similar to people. If you speak to people and they end up talking about having a very similar set of values, you know, like integrity or personal commitment to health and family and, you know, a decent wage. But practice-wise, things can differ a little bit. So to get into it, company culture is their business values, beliefs, behaviors, goals, attitudes, and actual workplace practices.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically culture is a word to describe the way people behave within an organization and the beliefs reflect those behaviors. Okay, so why is workplace culture so important and why are we dedicating a whole 45 minutes? No, I'm kidding. I have no idea how this is going to go for. So it is important because, okay, first things first, people matter. And who works at organizations? People. We're all people. And as Sohan said, we all have beliefs, we all have values, and we all behave differently. So we do matter. And we bring a huge value to an organization. In fact, we are pretty much the reason why the organization works in the first place. So it's really bloody important. Oh, how Australian did I sound? Amazing. So the workplace culture has actually an impact on organizational health and business success. So if there is a positive culture, people are highly engaged and give better service to the clients and the customers, or they bring more work in, or they even tend to be more creative or have like, just a better, yeah, they just feel like they are in an environment where they can thrive. And if they thrive, the organization thrives. Yay! So that's the reason why it's so important. I had 3 pieces of chocolate, guys. So I'm really, really excited about this. And yeah, anyway, so I feel like it's also very important because when a place has an excellent culture, it can attract talent, it drives engagement, and obviously it impacts the employee satisfaction. And this affects the performance. Do you want
Yeah.
more reasons why it's so important?
And it's the personality of the business. So, like with different people, it's their personality that makes you get along with them, essentially. So, if the workplace culture is the workplace personality, then naturally it's influenced by, it's a machine and every cog in the machine is what influences it. So
Mm.
a good way to figure out where the culture is set from, it's set from the leadership, the management, workplace practices, policies, people. They all play a part. Yeah, but essentially once you figure out that culture, you assuming you have a pretty good idea about your own personality, culture, what aligns with you, what makes you tick, then you're able to figure out whether or not a workplace works for you.
Exactly.
Workplace works for you.
It's so funny, funny, but it is true. Whether it aligns and meets your needs as a person, yeah. So you have heard of people that have stayed at like a place for like 10 years, 20 years. They have pretty much grown with the company, and they have been able to see the changes from like when they started to where they are now. But you also can see people that start at a company and stay there for 5 months. That doesn't necessarily mean anything to do with anyone's talent, and I don't feel like it's anyone's fault. It's just that some things work for some people and some works for other people.
And I want to share like a really cute story, and I can't remember for the life of me where I read this. I think it was in the book Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, but I could be wrong. And I think it's about IBM. Again, don't quote me, but my memory, it's not the best at times when I need it the most. Murphy's Law, everybody, I'm sure you can relate. But it was a story that really stuck with me about how positive work culture permeates the whole organization from top to bottom, bottom to top. Everybody can align with it. So, as the story goes, it was after hours, and there was a client that called up about some meeting or some information that they needed about some very specific, topics that perhaps, only customer service or a very technically like knowledgeable person would be able to point them to. And so they call after hours, hoping to get some information. And someone picks up. First of all, that's a big positive. And secondly, that person was able to listen to their query and then say, I'm going to call whoever is like going to give me that information and I'll get right back to you. So really well handled customer service. So at the end of it, the client was like, oh, your company is great. Like you work so late, keep taking care of your clients. And the response they got on the phone was, yeah, I'm the janitor, so I should be working late. This is like normal working hours for me. And the client was like completely shocked that, the janitor would go to that much detail and have that much understanding about the organization to be able to help someone, with very technical information. And they asked, like, how does this, why, like, this is so different? Why does this happen? And they're like, this is the company's values and the culture where everyone lives and breathes the value about excellent service. And yeah, and that's something like companies want to strive for. But if they don't have the right culture, you usually end up getting even very technically superior or technically, knowledgeable people saying, I don't really care because this company doesn't do much for me. So,
Yeah,
this is,
exactly. You don't want to just be working for someone that considers you a number,
mm,
because we
at the end
lose
of the
this
day.
the whole sense of humanity when that
Yeah.
happens, and we lose a lot of empathy. So
Mm,
obviously, one of our needs as human beings is to be understood and to feel like we belong to a community. So
yes, 100%.
by sensing all of these things at work, then we feel like we contribute, we feel valued, and we are more stimulated, like to go to work.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And yeah, because people are tribal people. At the end of the day, we're looking for a tribe. And my favorite podcast, I'm going to mention it again.
Steven,
Yeah, pretty
we're
much.
your fans. We are your number one fans, Steven. If you ever listen to this, please note that.
Yeah, he was talking to the founder of Demologica, and she talked about how, it was a very innovative space they were in, but the reason why it worked for her and made her company, in the multi-billion dollar company that it is today, is because they noticed one thing in the beauty industry was that everyone was very segregated. Because you work in a small little room where you see clients every day, then the more booked you are, the less you have time to interact with other professionals in your
Mm,
field.
mm,
And that's what made it a very, disconnected society. So the first thing they did was, it didn't matter like what events were on, but they tried to get all the professionals to turn up in the same location, talk with each other, interact with each other, and become a tribe. And that was literally the main feedback that they got. We feel like a family, we feel like we belong somewhere. And that skyrocketed their business, because
yeah,
people want a place to belong. And again, it's easy to confuse workplace culture. And now, like, you probably have some stuff to add here, because a lot of times when we look at a company, we look at what they have to offer and we think that is their culture.
yeah,
And what I mean by is that's like material benefits that you get from them. Like, well, if they pay, like, half of your gym memberships, like some companies do, or if they provide a certain type of leave, or,
yeah.
if they take care of you in a material way.
Sort of like the financial incentives that they give us. Like for example, I don't know, you by joining this company, you get paid like you are part of the shares program or whatever it
Mm.
is. If it's
Or you can
if it's
work
a
from wherever you want, or that kind of thing.
or like you have birthday leave or all these things, you like all these
Yeah.
benefits that you're offered that are also like pretty attractive when considering an offer because they also add up to your salary package. So yeah, it can often be confused with incentives or material benefits. And even though that's really attractive, as we said, and really nice, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's gonna help you get along with your colleagues.
Yeah, that's not the culture. That's just HR. I don't want to say tricks, but, like, incentives to have retention at the
Well,
end of the
it
day.
is it is a financial or like, it's a financial incentive, but it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean like yeah, they appreciate how hard you're working, don't get me wrong. Like
And
we
they want to
do
help you out.
understand that,
Yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are understanding the way you feel when you go to work. And I feel like there is a
Yeah.
very different, there's a big line separating these two things. Yes, you recognize how I work, and thank you so much for not thank you so much. I deserve this because I'm working really hard. Like I deserve a good pay. You know what I mean? Like people
This is
deserve
the
good pay.
attitude coming out.
And yeah, because we shouldn't really think, okay, so it is a big line separating, obviously, how organizations reward their employees with financial sort of like perks. And
Mm,
also with, it's like, okay, this is probably a crazy example to bring up, but, and maybe it's a wrong analogy. I don't know, but this is exactly what I'm thinking about right now. You know that we have different parenting styles again, and we have different love languages in relationships. And you know how some people's love language is to give things to another, like
mm,
financial
mm.
stuff and like receive presents and stuff like that. That's just one way of showing someone how much you care for them. But then there's other things like, I don't know, like quality time or like being heard or like words of affirmation or like spending time with you. all of those things make you feel like you are loved, you're appreciated, and all those things in a relationship matter. It's just exactly the same at the workplace. It's exactly the same. You need a good salary, but you also need to feel like you have a relationship with your colleagues. And I'm not saying that you should call them family or friends, but at least that you feel safe to go to work and you don't feel uncomfortable by what people are doing or saying about you. You want to feel appreciated and you want to feel safe. I feel safe is like a safe word to say. Haha.
And what we mean by safe is if you have an idea, you feel comfortable to voice it. If you have a comment about, a way someone worked or something that could benefit the team, you don't feel scared to mention it to anyone. You don't feel like, oh, this, it won't be taken well. Just like you were saying, like in a relationship, you feel heard. That's pretty much it. You feel like this is a place where you can share ideas, where you can share growth, and you can share feedback. Feedback's an important one, where you
Yeah.
don't feel like feedback will be taken explosively.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the culture. And if it's a safe culture, and it's a culture dedicated to innovation and openness, then yeah, you'll feel these things. But if it's a culture that strives for reducing costs or quickening timelines, then no, they're not really going to be that interested, and they might just be like, get the work done, we need it done quickly, quickly, quickly.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And
yeah.
just like there are different people and there are different like types of relationships, there are different workplace cultures. And perhaps that type of culture of like, like a more fast-paced environment can work for some people. And some people would thrive, like, don't get me wrong, like, well done to all of them. But there's other
Mm.
people that don't really vibe with that. And that's okay because that's diversity at the end.
Yeah,
So,
that is diversity. There's people who are looking for growth in a scalable way, in a business success way, in a monetary way, and there's people who just want to create
yeah.
and want to create something innovative, or there's people that just want to impact communities the right way. And oh, I'm so happy for this friend of mine, and I'm sure we'll have her on the podcast sometime later. Recently she left our organization, and that's not to say this organization does not focus on the same thing, but she left it for a company that is solely focused on international development. And if anyone interacted with her, they'd know that is, she lives and breathes that. So to be able to find a company culture that is perfectly in alignment with that, more power to her, because that gets her in alignment with her journey in
Well, it
life.
fulfills her, and I feel like that's
Exactly.
exactly what people mean when they say, like, I have found my dream job. Like, a big element to that dream job is not only the duties and tasks that you have to do daily, but also the environment that they allow you to, expand your knowledge and your experience as a professional. It's very
And
important.
fulfills your dreams, because
Yeah.
it's a dream job, because it's fulfilling your dreams. Oh my gosh.
Wow, a loop. So these are some of the benefits of positive workplace culture, and obviously the disadvantages of working in a place where you have a toxic culture would be, like feeling unmotivated, feeling like going to work is something that obviously, look, don't get me wrong, even if you love what you're doing, you're gonna have
Hmm.
ups and downs because it's completely normal. We have spoken about this in our podcast. Contrast makes life. It's like we have the good and we have the bad. But if you constantly like thinking about work as a burden, as like a place you don't want to go to because of how bad you feel there, that's a red flag. And we don't want to like work there. And it's important for you to notice because so I was listening to these my mom actually sent me this when I was going through a difficult time at the beginning of the year. She sent me this video that was talking about relationships again because like relationships are a big important part of our life as human beings, and I don't just mean romantic relationships. So she sends me this video that says that you have to understand somehow in our belief system we have been conditioned to believe that we have to just del- maybe deliver or just perform the best we can always because we're getting picked. Someone is choosing us. But it's very empowering when you're told that you can choose as well. And if you can choose an organization that aligns truly with those values and you know that you pretty much know what you can bring to an organization, then you're gonna be able to make those decisions. But if you're constantly in that state of fear and thinking like, okay, this because that toxic work culture is fitting that belief to you, then you're gonna feel like limited and you're gonna feel like, oh, that's all I can get, and maybe this is all what like that I deserve. But no, really, it's just that it's such a like a toxic environment that you cannot spread your roots as a plant and thrive and live. So it's really important to identify when a toxic culture is not bringing the best out of you.
And the reason why this is important, if you're not able to spread your wings and you feel stressed out and, things are not really going your way, well, we could probably go into this in more detail. If anyone ever wants a whole episode on stress, let us know, and the bad, impact stress can have on your health and well-being. But what I was reading today, and the only reason I want to mention it, is that there is a fact by Georgetown University, I think they did a study, is that your IQ can decrease by as much as 13% when you're stressed. Literally. Like, there is long-term effects of stress that go beyond that, but it can literally decrease IQ.
Yeah.
So I think that my understanding is if a company is striving for innovation and striving for brilliant minds, if they don't have good culture, they could literally, well, be dumbing down the minds there.
And if we want to go into more of a neuroscience sort of like explanation to this, is because stressful situations make us not feel in that equilibrium, like we are not in a state of homeostasis. So when you are focused on, when you are in that flight or fight sort of like mode, you can't really deliver or focus on other things like working or like completing these tasks, because you're constantly worried about whether you're going to live or die in your survival instinct that you have as an animal. So if a person has been put in a situation that leads them to that point of stress, then they are not going to perform, they are not going to do well, because obviously they are caring about whether they are going to make it out of that situation alive or not. And I know it sounds dramatic when I'm describing it this way, but sometimes
that's how the body reacts.
Yeah, exactly. And you cannot focus on finishing an Excel spreadsheet or finishing a document if you feel like your life is like threatened.
Your body produces cortisol in the same way that it would in a fight or flight environment. It affects the cognitive behavior, it affects your memory, and affects all of that in the exact same behavior. So that's
our neuroscience fact of the day.
But pretty much what we would like to get into is, how do you find a company that fits your needs, and how do you identify if the culture is, working for you or not?
Exactly. And I just wanted to say that was really important for people that are young and listening to us and are like finishing the university courses and don't really feel like, how would I be able to notice these things if I have never been part of an organization before? So Sohan has the best questions that you should ask yourself at this time.
So the first one we are going to talk about is, do you feel like you thrive in a collaborative environment, or do you feel like you're working in a competitive work environment?
So again, self-awareness is key for anything, as we have previously mentioned.
How do you feel things are working around you? Do you feel like the team is collaborative, they share learnings, you're able to learn from each other, bounce off ideas, or do you feel like you have to work really hard because if someone else in the team works harder than you, they get promoted and they get pushed up and you'll just get
ignored?
Yeah, pretty much. So if you feel like you're always under that stress, something might be wrong with the culture.
Yeah. So another question that is really important to ask yourself when choosing this or when applying for a job is whether you prefer the structured workday or flexibility in setting your hours. There's some organizations, I know, 21st century, and we still have some organizations that are pretty rigid. And that works, as we said, for some people. For others like, working from 9 until 4, or like some people in America or even here in Australia, I don't know, don't quote me, but some organizations work 4 days a week and they have like a 3-day weekend, and that works for them.
Yeah, they were trialing that in Europe, I'm pretty sure, recently.
Yes, but things like these are really important because, for example, if you have commitments, or if, like, for example, if you are an engineer full-time or like part-time, but you also are an athlete, or you also have your side hustle, or you also have children, whatever it is that you do, if you want flexibility, then ask yourself that question, if that company is going to provide you that flexibility.
The third thing that we were reading about that is important about workplace culture is, do you want more independence in your work environment, or do you prefer like more hands-on leadership? And of course, this depends leader to leader, so it's definitely not a company-wide thing. But it's just important to know in your team if you feel like you need more independence but you're not getting it. Um,
And this also depends on the level of your experience, I guess. Like if you're a grad that just finished university, perhaps that won't be applicable because you just finished your degree and you want to obviously be guided by someone that has a set like a level of experience. So perhaps that yeah that is applicable depending on your experience in the industry.
yeah, but if you're a senior and a senior above you is like constantly trying to like question you about what you're doing when you're going to have it done by, kind of weird, to be honest.
It's interesting because sometimes I feel like when people do that, it's in like it's like a lot of projection on of their own fears, if that makes sense, or not own fears,
Yeah.
but their stuff. So
Mm.
it's important to bring it up 100%. Um,
Projection, another very important topic, to be
yeah. Oh
honest.
my God. Another one, and very, very, very important, as we were talking, is do you enjoy talking through ideas with colleagues or working individually? So personally, I love working in a team, and I feel like I I really enjoy that because as a side of like I'm gonna say personality trait, but I think I just always being a very like extrovert person and I love talking and socializing. And even though I do need my alone time to work and to actually finish stuff, um, it's like I really enjoy working in a team. But there are other people that are not really into that, and it's something that they should consider because if this social butterfly is going to be overwhelming them, they're going to probably feel like a little bit, just, oh my God, this is really not my place. Like, I feel like, oh, it's too much for me in a sense. Like, I'm all for going to a place where you don't feel comfortable so you grow, but also don't put yourself in a very awful situation in which you're not going to be able to cope with. And again, like you're going to feel super stressed and not going to be able to deliver things that are very important. Um,
Mm.
so, side note.
um, Also, there is then, do you like working on a variety of different projects or focusing on a specific area? And that is definitely something that varies, company to company, but industry to industry. And, it just depends on the work in the area. But there are different companies that are more receptive to you having one idea and you focus on that.
Oh,
And it does
yeah.
depend on your skill level as well, to be honest.
Like, for example, the
So
girl you were talking about that was working for an engineering firm, but then the company she chose to change was more focused on what she wanted to do.
that's a good point. Yeah. So it depends what you're looking for, to be honest. Like if you there's some companies that are perfectly happy for you to go off and do a research project in a specific area, and that's definitely focusing on one thing. But there's other companies that will just be like, oh no, but what about the projects? We need X, Y, and Z done. We can't, afford to have you focusing on some side thing. So yeah, it's just a difference
Hmm.
in cultures, I guess.
Yeah. So another one that is very important is, will this organization be able to help me or help you with uniting goals? And I feel like these I can relate to this one personally because one of my long term goals is to be a civil engineer, is to finish the bachelor in engineering. And that's like a key thing for me when looking for a job or when joining a company. I'm very open about that goal and I tell them that in order for me to to achieve that, I might need like some extra support from them, like flexible working arrangements or things like that that are going to be able to help me finish that long term goal that I have. And it really helps when obviously it has to do with what you doing at work already. Like I'm improving my professional I guess I'm expanding my professional experience in the same field. But if you have like other goals, like for example, you're working in a department and then you want to change to a different one, it's important to voice your needs and see whether they can make it happen for you in the organization. And if they can't, maybe that's the reason, like that's for you to consider whether you should stay or should go or what you should do.
Exactly, exactly. Love it. One thing I was looking at when we were looking at this topic is why does this matter for STEM and women in STEM? And because we are women in STEM and we talk about them, and that's pretty much what we are about. Um, I was looking at company culture and how this has affected, well, we have something in the industry that's called a leaky pipeline for women in the industry. And
Yes.
unfortunately, it is much higher than a lot of other industries out there. And just for some research purposes to back this up, there was a, well, is, not was, there was some research done. It was a comparison of women's retention in STEM and professional occupations. And it is published by the National Library of Medicine, but I'm pretty sure it goes well above and beyond that. So essentially, what the research was looking at, they found that about 50% of women who originally worked in STEM end up exiting the that industry and enter a different field. Okay, 50%, that's half in an industry where females are already very little, and if they look at other different professions, that's only about 20% that happens. So it's not that they just leave the industry and then they leave the workforce. No, that's not what it means. It's literally they leave that industry and then they go to a different profession.
Yeah, they completely change careers. Like for example, you hear
Yeah,
of people that used to be an engineer and now I don't know, in the health and fitness industry, in like
yeah.
fashion design or something like that. It's not that they changed their role. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that they're finding doesn't have to do with the biological differences in males and females or their persistence. It is the reason of their dissatisfaction is basically things that you can attribute to culture and perception. So it comes
Exactly.
down to not being heard when they express dissatisfaction, or not being looked at for promotions, or not being looked at for salary raises, things like that, where they just feel like they've hit a ceiling and they just can't freaking get above. And that's what
Yeah,
makes them
or
leave.
like for example, the gender stereotypes that we have that are brought
Mm,
up in like in conversations, like or even like the gender roles that we tend to, you know, we tend to have in our mind. Unfortunately, there's a big bias with gender roles, and we're starting to make progress in the sense of like like challenging those gender roles, but it's really hard still for a lot of people. They still make comments, or there's still like a judgment there, and that just makes people feel uncomfortable, and people feel like they don't really belong there, or they don't feel represented, and that leads them to just just look for an exit door.
yeah. And so because like there's already like a lack of volume in of women in STEM fields, especially at higher levels when you get up to like seniors or partners and that sort of thing, women entering STEM occupations are already vulnerable to the ideologies of very gender conservative sort of men. And it's some research done in 2011 have shown that a belief about the performance of women actually has a very strong effect on the evaluation of their actual performance, and that's if you hold like their objective performance constant.
Oh yeah, it's a bias,
So that
100%.
is another thing that affects these women who that's why they're reaching these glass ceilings, and they're not looking, they're not being able to get ahead, is because like there is all these biases in regard to how they're
Yeah.
doing as opposed to how they might actually be doing. And that's again comes down to again bias, but also company culture and being able to
Mm.
voice things, being able to speak openly, being
Mm.
able to point
And
out what's happening wrong.
I feel like it's really important if, like, obviously, this would be ideal if you were at work and people that had those biases were challenged by others and then they were willing to
Mm.
talk about it, you know? Just like, I guess if they felt safe enough to just open up about why they think the way they think, so others can, learn, but also these people that have the biases can learn from these open-minded people and be like, oh, should I, is this like really inclusive, this way of looking at life, or isn't, or it isn't, you know what I mean? Like, it would be so good if you could.
Yeah, and I
That's,
literally like whenever we talk about this, I keep coming back to that senior at the company that we had heard speaking, who had said when they were looking at, they were sitting on panels and they were looking at, females coming in, and he would just be like, oh, have you considered this candidate? And she was like, the female candidate,
mm,
and the males around them said, oh, we didn't even consider her.
mm. And I think in one of the episodes that we had again with Luisa Panuccio, episode number 6, if you haven't heard it, go and listen to it because she is a weapon and she's in construction, which is completely different from where we are at, I guess, because we work in an office environment. But she faces a lot of challenges in like how women are perceived in that industry. And there's a lot of things that have been normalized, and it's very important to have a good work culture on site.
But
So,
there's different parts of that culture that I think what you're trying to say have been normalized, maybe because of a lack of, external influence. And by
mm,
external, I mean an opposite gender or different types of leaders. There's a different type of language that gets, normalized. There's a different type of behavior. There's a different type of mindset that just becomes the norm over there.
mm,
And if we don't address it through, I believe it would probably be a more top down movement than a bottom up movement, like the leader saying that that's not okay, or, people higher up trying to
mm,
change that perception. Then obviously, like, people on the grassroots level should also be calling it out, but it is almost a cultural shift. So it ends up being like there's sort of like, whether it's derogatory statements or just like exclusion or simple things like, and this is not Louisa, this is another friend of mine who goes on site, and she talked about how she was the senior between her and a male guy there, and automatically all the questions that were coming were like deferred to the male, even though he was like knew he had no idea what was going on, but they just thought he was like the leader because,
yeah.
well, he was
It's
male.
like it's like we are biased because every time that, and we have spoken about this before, but perhaps I don't know. But it's like our brain goes like the default of our brain is in anything that we see. If we see the word competence, it's like if the word
Male.
competence was an image, it would be a white male.
Mm. Literally, I'm still prey to that. And I will be honest, like I was talking to a colleague, a friend, not a colleague, a friend the other day, and all the only words they said was their boss was, really receptive, or their boss was really good at giving feedback. And my first question was, oh yeah, how does he give you good feedback? And he's like, well, she. Holy
See,
shit.
wow.
How did I just immediately imagine male?
Yeah, and I
Like,
feel like this. I think we really need to do the bias episode. I think we would benefit so
yeah.
much from it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we
Anyway,
had a post about this. We talked about our brilliance bias. That's pretty much it.
so a lot of the reasons to why women leave, our industry or like industries that are male dominated are not just because of our difference in interests or our difference in like competency or how good how many degrees we have. A lot of it is because the work culture again doesn't allow us to thrive. Why? Because there's so many biases that we have, and it's sad to witness, but we are all victims of it. But again, it's not unconscious until you know and you actually, like make it conscious. So make sure your conscious biases are also like addressed.
And if we can come full circle with this, we talked about how Erica Gomez at the start said that there's fundamental ways in which males and females react differently or engage very differently in a workplace or in a social setting. And for example, if I can say, like, as women, we tend to want to be more humane in an approach. When we interact with people, we want to know how they're doing, how have they been, how are they happy, are they sad, what's been happening in their life. A simple question like, how's your day been? And if that small level of interaction is not there, and it usually isn't, not from my understanding and not from the conversations I've had with males, it's very normal for them to just engage straight in business and then just, like, make a few jokes, but they just get straight to it. It's not as normal for them to want to be that connected. So unfortunately what happens is, if that uh, conversation is not there, if that interaction is not there, then the environment ends up feeling very hostile to women.
Mm,
Not very, but it can end up feeling excluded, or you can end up feeling like, you're missing a fundamental connection with your workers,
yeah.
and that's not a great environment to be in. It's either a simple matter of you engaging in that, not really, it's not small talk. I don't think it's small talk. It's a deeper connection level, and it's connecting on a humane level. It's connecting on an emotional level with the people you work with, so that you can maintain trust and engagement.
Mm,
So it sometimes, I'd say, it goes both ways. I think it definitely, the onus is on both parties, where, females can engage in that, or they can voice not feeling that. But it's also males just coming up and just, saying, how are you going? How's your day been? And then getting into business.
Into business.
Mm.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like that's even like important from like a human aspect of things. Like sometimes, as we said, like no one is actually gonna remember you because you were like really good at making deals, or like how much money you brought to a company. People are gonna remember skills like, oh, that person was really kind, they always ask me about my day, or oh, that guy. Like I remember when my dad passed away, most of the stuff that people like remember from him, when because he was a pharmaceutical salesperson, and I
Oh,
bet
wow.
you that the doctors that he worked with didn't really, or like the organization that worked with him, no one probably remember how much money he brought to the company. They all talk about the good attributes, like the how social he was, how funny he was. People don't remember those material things. People remember those things that that make you heart shine, or like that make
Yeah.
your day be a good day. So I feel like it's really important, and sometimes it's underestimated.
Yeah, without getting too morbid. Like if you imagine a eulogy, no one's ever going to be like, oh, this person brought $1 million in sales to the company.
No.
I'm sure that was great for the company, but that's not something that's going to be remembered. They're going to be like, this person, always brought a laugh to people who they spoke to, or they cared about the little details. They cared about whether someone was happy, or they engaged with the janitor as well as the CEO. Like it's those little details that we end up saying make a person great.
And it's the same little details that make a company a great company. I have heard of so many companies that are unfortunately recognized, or yeah, well known because of their unethical way of treating people. Like big companies that you hear that don't pay a fair wage, or that
Oh
abuse
yeah,
their employees.
exploitation.
So yes, exploitation. So, do you, as an organization or as a person, do you want to be like, related to that? Those are things and questions that you have to ask yourself every day.
I was gonna say that is everything that we I have to say on the topic.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything we have to say. And anyway, guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you so much for listening to our take on workplace culture.
Yeah, and if it got you thinking a little bit, that's our job done. But if you have any thoughts on it and you'd like to share, agreeing or disagreeing, we're always very happy to hear about it.
Yeah, challenger.
Yes, I challenge you to challenge us. I like that. Maybe that will be the quote we'll put up for this.
Okay, bye.
Bye.